things, and so if some of you in the back want to come and take a seat, we'll get started. I'd appreciate it if you could close those doors in the back. Somebody's behind there, if you would, for me. This is a panel on the 25-week Learn to Dance plan that has been under fire for a couple of years. We hope that we can clarify some of the misconceptions about it during this session and point out some things that we feel strongly about, that this is something that came out of a need. It's nothing that somebody created because they just like to create another set of lesson plans or something. But anyway, I'd like to introduce my panel here. To my right, Kenny Farris from Oro, Maryland. And Mike Degmetich, close? He answers to anything, from California. They will have something to say to you in a few minutes. We still have some people coming in. If you guys would come on in and take a seat. I like to preface everything that goes on here with one comment, at least, and that is that we're not here to call anybody names or point out anybody's faults. This is a professional organization, and we hope to conduct it that way. Nothing should be taken personal by anybody, and we'd like to keep it on that vein, if you don't mind. I'm going to start off with giving just a little history of what happened to clarify that in anybody's mind who doesn't already know that. Want to come down and take a seat down front, you guys, or? That's it. Thank you very much. As the number of plus-level clubs grew in throughout the United States and Canada and the square dance world, especially in the more populated areas, it seems, the need for a quicker way to get new dancers into these clubs became apparent. The need was expressed by several callers who produced suggested lists to accomplish this end. CALLERLAB picked up the ball with the formation of an ad hoc committee under the guidance of Francis Zella. This committee functioned at the Phoenix Convention, if some of you were there and remember that. Out of this committee's work came recognition of the crying need to shorten the teaching time necessary to prepare new dancers for membership in these plus clubs. 41 weeks were much too long. We needed to examine our mainstream and plus list to see if what we were teaching was realistic or not. And thus, the following resolution was drafted and voted on by the membership, CALLERLAB membership. Be it resolved that CALLERLAB establish a committee to determine which calls from the basic, mainstream, and plus lists can be capably taught in 25 weeks at 2 hours per session. And that was the directive handed down to us. I was asked to head that committee, and with the help of an excellent group of callers, we came up with the program as it now stands. That program has been published in guidelines and several other places, so I think you're all familiar with it. We have had many letters concerning the merits of this program, both pro and con. Most of the letters against the program were from callers or callers' organizations who had no need for the program in the first place. because their existing programs were doing well and they had no reason to change. Most of these had, of course, not even tried the program. Reasons given were as follows. No need for this type of program in the area. 25 weeks viewed as insufficient time to teach it properly. The program will create another level, neither plus nor mainstream. Dancers completing this program will run into problems when they travel, attend festivals, and so forth. And then there were those who simply want to keep mainstream and plus separate, which is fine. Most of the letters of support were from callers who had used or were using the program or a similar one and were having favorable results. These letters were from callers working primarily in heavily populated areas with a lot of plus clubs, which had been in existence for a while, and which needed a program in order to get their new dancers into these existing clubs in one season of lessons. Many of these callers suggested minor changes or revisions in the list and teaching order, and those things were taken into consideration. My own feeling on that is that if there are minor problems in a particular area, that's not a critical thing. I'm not really concerned about whether this little figure ought to be taken out, added, and so forth. It's the idea that's important. So with that background, today we would like to point out just a couple of things. One is very important misconception that this is another program. It is not and never was intended to be another program. It is simply a list of calls, a teaching order, a teaching plan, if you will, used by callers who need it to put new dancers into their clubs. We're not out to shoot down the mainstream program or the plus program or anything else. But we did quite a bit of work in finding out just which calls from both lists were being used. That was done with tapes. We did frequency counts on tapes, and a lot of information was sent from callers all over the country. We got tapes from festivals and things like that to see what was called at festivals. And this information was all compiled, and we made lists and so forth. And in some cases, figures were not used at all that are on the list and then being taught, therefore taking up teaching time. Now, if we had all the time in the world to teach, we'd have no problem. We don't have that luxury anymore. Parts of the country have a very short teaching season, and they have even a more complicated problem. So this was an attempt coming out of a need, and we did the job, and that's where we stand. And I'd like it now to turn the mic over to Mike, and he has some comments for you. Thank you.
My comments are really very brief. I just feel that you need to recognize that there is a need, especially in the urban areas, for an opportunity for our dancers to more quickly be integrated into our local clubs. This 25-week plan, lesson plan, which we hope to continue and to develop a regular lesson plan out of, will accomplish that. It's important that all of us recognize we are not trying to take away from or substitute for any program. This is a lesson plan, and please view it in that way. And I think you'll find that those of us who teach and work in the urban areas are feeling a need for this, and this is the thing that we're saying. This is who are crying out for this. And if you are in a non-urban area, try to recognize our problem and try to help us deal with this problem. We see it as a problem. Our dancers see it as a problem, and we're trying to work towards a solution to that problem. And that's my main comment, is please look at it from your perspective, but recognize what we're trying to deal with. This is mainly in a large urban area problem where we have frequency of dancing is more than once a week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We will have you will have an opportunity for questions, but I would like Kenny Farris to make his presentation first. Kenny?
Good morning. When they first started talking about a 25-week Learn to Dance program, I was kind of against it. I said, wait a minute, you aren't learning to dance in 25 weeks. Are you just trashing those other calls, or what? And I was kind of not too supportive. But the more I talked with people who were working on it, I came to the conclusion that there's a lot of misinformation about just what the goals were of this program. So when Red called me and asked me if I'd be interested in serving on the panel, I kind of formulated my thoughts and put together what perhaps we may use as a starting point on a press release to explain to the public what we're trying to do here. And if I can read this for you, and I'm going to have we have a number of copies we'll hand out later. If we hand them out now, you won't be listening, will you? The 25-week Dance with the Home Club plan. Not Learn to Dance, because we're not going all the way. And in parentheses, we say for plus clubs only. The 25-week plan is not a new program. It is not for use where classes feed into a mainstream club after graduation. It is an optional plan, a course of action for use by callers who are teaching classes which will feed directly into plus clubs. The idea is to first teach the most popular calls used at the home sponsoring club. This may take approximately 25 weeks. When the calls in the 25-week plan have been mastered, class members may be invited to dance with the home club on a regular basis. The class has not graduated and may not attend open dances yet. Class members may only attend their class, the home club, and/or any other club which has agreed to participate in the plan. As classes continue, the caller will work into the club dances the material covered at class until the full plus program, inclusive of the mainstream program, is being used. The new dancers should then be advised of their accomplishment, ceremoniously congratulated, and set loose on the square dance world. It would of course be great if all classes could feed into mainstream clubs. As this is not the reality of the square dance scene in many areas, CALLERLAB offers the plan, a suggested course of action where needed in the best interest of square dancing. And that's something, this is going to be a starting point for a press release, we hope, to explain to the public what we're trying to do here. And a lot of the mail that's come in, most of the negative stuff has been from clubs or areas where they have successful mainstream programs. And I applaud areas where mainstream is still the dominant program. That's super. I wish it was that way everywhere. But in a lot of areas, as we know, there are very few mainstream clubs, if any. And plus is where the dancers, that's the initial entry-level program for them. A lot of dancers don't even know there is such a thing as mainstream because they're taught from point A to point B. And this is to help in those areas because I don't see any way to go back. It's great to sit here and say, well, they shouldn't be doing that. Excuse me. But it's tough in those areas. They can't just chuck it all and, okay, well, let's start mainstream clubs. Well, now your new dancers you're bringing in, they want to dance with their friends, and their friends are dancing at the plus clubs. Well, then you say, okay, well, why don't those plus dancers come back and dance at the mainstream clubs? Well, as you know, dancers may not want to dance more than once a week. That's all they have the time to do. There's a lot of reasons why it's not going to happen. Eventually, it'd be great if we could convince the mainstream committee to eliminate some of the calls that are not used heavily which we've tried to do this weekend, and we're only slightly successful at. Hopefully we can, in the coming years, improve that, and at the same time dwindle the Plus program down a little bit so there's a fewer calls on there, so that areas that are dancing this the Plus program as the entry level will have a shorter routine to go through until they can join the clubs. But in the meantime, we want to work within the system, so we're not putting down the programs. We want to work with those programs. But this is just a plan of action to help with the class-to-club transition. And as you know, we said they are not to be released on the square dance world and said, go dance. And clubs should not dance at this as a level, this 25-week program. This is a stepping stone. This is when you reach this point, then you bring them into your clubs. They get to know people, they make friends, and maybe even the club people will start coming back to class a little more and helping out. And the more they dance in the class, the quicker in the club, the sooner they're going to finish those calls because they're going to become better dancers, having danced with the experienced dancers. That's all I have to say right now. Thank you very much.
Okay. At this time, if any of you have some comments, we would entertain questions. Please state your name, where you're from when you go to the mic. You may have to pull a switch on that, I'm not sure.
Okay, it should be on that. There we go. My name is Arlen Miller. I'm from Los Angeles. And in the Los Angeles area, we had a crying need for this program. First of all, Red, I had the opportunity to listen to your tape with Wade Driver from last year's convention about it. And just as a personal comment, I want to thank you guys very much. You did very well and did a lot of hard work to give us this program.
Thank you.
Mike Sikorsky had written a couple of articles for a publication in Los Angeles called the California Square Dancer Blue Book, extolling the virtues of the program and also clarifying it as well. I took the program back to my clubs that I teach for, very enthusiastic, saying this was a way to cut down the dropout rate, the tremendous dropout rate. However, I made a promise to the club that I would pass along their comments to the committee, as well as my own. Their general comment was, it's a great program, however, our people feel pressured, particularly in the last 6 weeks of class, up to and including what we did, in fact, graduate people in March. Brought them into the club to dance. We had sent the list, the new 25-week list, to the caller who was going to be calling that dance, because we're on the guest caller system in Los Angeles. Their general comment was they felt pressured. They felt that it was too much at the end. We had to contend with, of course, holidays where we didn't dance. Even though at this point I feel that the program, if it were given a chance to work, would still work. I kind of walked in here thinking, were we in fact going to be doing an autopsy on this program? Okay, I wasn't sure. From a personal standpoint, I can tell you that I did in fact feel pressured. I wanted to make sure they knew how to do Relay the Deucey. By the time that club dance came up, it was a fight. And I'm sure that when they went to the club dance, they did in fact struggle through Relay the Deucey. But I'm still open to the program. And if there are any suggestions that anybody has as to how to implement this program better, I'd sure like to hear them.
Thank you very much. We would like to also. We're very open to any suggestions from anybody as to how to improve what we have already. Appreciate your comments. Yes.
My name is Steve Nosek. I'm from Renton, Washington. I come from an area that is urban, has basically 53 clubs in the greater Puget Sound area, which includes Seattle. 24 of those clubs are plus clubs. I think that is a very representative area of a large city. We are very fortunate to have a strong mainstream club base there. Unfortunately, with our area, it is very easy for us to criticize this particular program because we do not see a particular need for it. For the gentleman from California, what I'd like to do is ask 3 very quick questions, if I could. I hear that Southern California is an area that has this problem as far as a problem with mainstream. I wanted to ask Kenny, is Maryland an area that also has experienced a decline in mainstream clubs? If that is also the case, if Red would also comment on other areas that he knows of through his correspondences with other callers to give us an idea of what areas specifically are having the problem with the mainstream clubs and they need this program. That's my first question.
Okay. Mike, I guess the first one is addressed to you. Would you use the mic, please, because we are being taped and I want everything to...
I can speak for the San Francisco Bay Area, and counting not only the San Francisco area, but the southern San Francisco area, the Santa Clara Valley. I would say that might represent 100 square dance clubs in those two general areas. I would venture that there might be 2 mainstream clubs within that general area, and I don't think I'd be too far wrong. I know in our particular area we have 55 clubs. There are no mainstream clubs in the Santa Clara Valley. So what we're saying is that's the area that has a need for this type of a program.
Is there other areas on the East Coast? Kenny, do you have a problem in your area, in Maryland?
I live in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. I have one of about 6 mainstream clubs in the area. I have a very successful mainstream program on Saturday nights. We dance 10 to 12 squares, and we have a ball. So I haven't needed this program personally because I teach the mainstream and got a place for them to dance. But there are very few places for them to dance. When you graduate your dancers and say, now you can go dancing, then you say, but really there's only 6 clubs out of 160 in the Washington, D.C. area that you can dance at. So it's tough. I'm fighting a battle there. We just had a festival, the Wasca Festival. Some of you may have heard about it. It's been going on for 30 years now. And the programming at this festival, as many festivals probably are now, you have advanced every hour of the festival. You have challenge every hour of the festival. You have plus every hour of the festival. Mainstream, they're not very kind to. Most of the hour, because we complain about it, they give it to us most of the time, but would you believe Saturday afternoon from 12 to 3, this was a Thursday night, Friday, Saturday festival, 12 to 3 Saturday afternoon, no place for the mainstream dancer to dance. So we're fighting the dancer organization, which is I hope they're not going to listen to this tape. I better not. They're heavily dominated, the board, with advanced dancers, and they don't seem to see what we're saying. They say the advanced people pay for the rooms at the hotel, which provides the dance space, but it's a big vicious circle there. And outside the Washington, D.C. area, the Baltimore area, they have, and from talking to the guys up there, it's kind of a different world from Washington, they have very few mainstream clubs. And they're even, this is kind of crazy, I think, but they're voting on, right now, going back to, they want to sanction their soft plus. Okay? Most of the clubs up there, they dance mainstream in about 8 plus calls. And as the callers organization up there is talking about, for their area, a new club level, and they want to decide which of the 8 plus calls they want to put on this thing. They're kind of going their own way because I think back when we had a +1 and a +2, everybody, all the clubs in that area danced +1 and they were fine, they were happy. But then when they put it all together, they weren't so happy, and they never did call all of the calls at their dances. Anything else I can...
I just have just one other quick question, and this will probably refer to Red.
Okay.
Looking back since 1986 when this program was first brought up and discussed and so on, if we can assume that the slowing down of the plus rush is a trend throughout our country, I only can speak of just the areas that I'm familiar with, the Pacific Northwest, particularly Oregon, Idaho, Washington. If this is true, if this trend of slowing down the number of plus dancers has happened, would this have a change of your thinking as far as this particular program? Would you feel that the need for additional plus calls on the mainstream would be not as important as perhaps when we knew and recognized that there was this big push for the number of plus dancers? Would that change your committee's thinking? Thank you.
I'm not sure that I agree that there's a slowdown on plus dancers. That may be in some areas. But certainly if there was no need for this program, you know, it's here because we had a need for it. It's not something that was superimposed on the square dance population. First there was the need, and then there was the plan, the lesson plan. I just like to point out some of the areas that we had negative comments from. So, Vermont, which is primarily a rural state, okay? Calgary, Canada, Oregon, you know more about this, Mike, but Newport Beach, California, Southern California, okay?
No, I know it's Southern California, but I don't know what it is.
Okay.
I only know of one. I know of one club in the Got it. Since we had somebody from Southern California come up, I know that there is one very vital group, mainstream group in the Los Angeles area that is very successful. And of course, I think the important thing to recognize is we're saying nothing against the mainstream program. We certainly don't want to change it. We don't want to add or subtract. All we're saying is that there are programs that are in those areas that are in need of an easier transition level.
Yes. You called her? The club folded. Yeah, we got to use the mic, guys, really, because we want all this to be on the tape, so nothing's left out.
No, the Rambling Rogues did not fold, but they've gone to plus.
They've gone to plus now. Okay. Incorrect information. Let's have it corrected then.
In the Los Angeles, my name is Rob Cunningham. I call in Huntington Beach, California. In the Los Angeles area, we have a club called the Mainstreamers, which dances on every third Sunday. And there's also another organization which is sponsored by the South Coast Association, which is the Fourth Sunday Hoedown, which is also a mainstream level dance. Mm-hmm. There are also several caller-sponsored dances in the area. You know, it takes the time to look at the Blue Book to find them, but there are mainstream dances in our area.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
I'm going to jump in here. I am Ron Black. I have a group in Palos Verdes, which is Southern California, which voted to use the 25-week list, and we advertise ourselves as mainstream /plus. We have now doubled our attendance in the last year from 2 squares to 4 squares on an average dance night. And we're happy with it.
Well, thank you very much. Just before we go ahead with the next question, Kenny had a comment about the previous...
Yes, if I could respond to the... what is your name, to Steve. You suggested that someone was trying to put plus calls on the mainstream list. That is not the case. No one's trying to put plus calls on the mainstream program. Over the mainstream committee meeting yesterday, when they said, who wants to add calls? Everybody in the room, who does not want to add calls? The whole room stood up. Nobody wants to add calls to the mainstream. We're trying to go just the other direction. We want to shorten our teaching program, okay? This plan, 25-week plan, is not for areas that have strong mainstream programs and clubs running. It's not for you. That's super. We applaud you. That's great. I wish it was that way in my area. I'm fighting the battle all by myself in Washington, D.C. There's about 5 of us out of 60 callers that have mainstream clubs. And I wish my area had a predominance of mainstream and that plus was a little something else. But it's not that way. And we have to accept the fact that across the country, a lot of areas, plus is the entry level. Okay? And if that's going to be the case, we can't let it grow and let it be an advanced program. I guess that's a comment for the plus program. The other thing I want to mention is, let's please begin now referring to this thing as a plan. It's not a program. It's not a program. We don't want to call it a list. It's a plan. It's a teaching plan. And hopefully when we leave where are we here? Reno, Nevada, right? When we leave Reno, we'll say, are you going to use the plan? I'm using the plan. And maybe that'll be the new keyword, the plan, whether or not you're going to participate in it. Pardon me? It's not a level or program or any of those things. Okay. I know, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's bad. It's a shame I'm saying, hopefully we're going to correct that right here. That's been the biggest problem, and why we've gotten a lot of flack is because it's been labeled as a program. I think if we stop labeling it as a program and calling it that, and refer to it as a teaching plan, which is what we want it to be, maybe it'll gain acceptance in plus areas. Now, once again, if you got a mainstream thing going, don't worry about it. And I just wanted to add one other thing before I sit down. In Baltimore, 2 years ago, they had a room like this, just jam-packed with people, standing room only, and Jack Lasry was the moderator, and he said, do we want a shorter teaching plan? Yeah, the whole place is screaming and yelling. Do we want to take some calls off the list? The whole place is screaming and yelling, and everybody's applauding and going crazy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then we get to the mainstream meeting here 2 years later, and they want to keep standard half sachet. They want to keep partner hinge. They want to keep little garbage calls that have fallen into disuse. I don't understand it. Do we want to shorten our programs or do we not? And who are we doing this for, ourselves or our dancers? We want to get the dancers involved in square dancing sooner. We want to get them to the clubs sooner. We want them to have fun sooner. Of course, they should have fun the first night. Don't get me wrong on that. But we had a mandate in Baltimore for this. And now we're sitting on our hands and we're crying about it. Come on, let's go. Let's go with this thing. And another thing, when we get there tomorrow morning, if anybody tries to freeze any programs, please, let's vote that down. We need some progress, not standing still.
Okay, next.
I'm Glenn Rahoff from Kent, Washington. I'm the president of the local Teachers and College Association in Puget Sound area, and we as an organization were very concerned to the point that I went to New Orleans last year to see what was happening, and then a large contingent of us are here this year because, as Steve has stated, we have a strong mainstream program, and we want to see that continue, as well as a viable plus program with guys that are using what has been accepted teaching methods that we've had in the past, i.e. you teach them the mainstream and then they go to plus, or they're mainstream dancers that go to a plus class. So I have a couple questions based on this, what you stated this morning, and I agree that we've all been led to believe that this is another program, and I think the misnomer has led us down the path saying we don't want another program. But I'd like to ask Red, and it's not stated anywhere that I know of, what is the recommended time following 25 weeks to go to the completion of workshops so that you've got the entire mainstream program and the entire plus program? Has your committee addressed that issue?
We have not set a specific time because it would vary depending on the club and the type of operation they have after the classes are over. Some clubs have a weekly workshop after the classes are over. And if you can do that, that's an excellent way of getting there faster, you know.
My concern with that as a mainstream caller in the Seattle area is having dancers from Southern California, probably more than the East Coast, who travel an awful lot up and down the West Coast, who after completion of the 25-week Learn to Dance plan walk into my mainstream dance. Now hear me out, okay? Even though their caller may have told them, hey, you are not a graduated plus dancer, walk in and say, well, I've had mainstream, or the body of that, walk into my dance and say, here, I'm here to dance, a mainstream dance, okay? Because our perception of dancing in the Pacific Northwest is you're a mainstream dancer or you're a plus dancer. And there's no in-between, no man's land. So they walk into my dance and I blow them off the floor calling normal mainstream that my mainstream dancers will dance. I think that'll be detrimental to square dancing if that happens. Now, that may be a small piece, okay? And if that's a small piece, then we say, well, we're going to sacrifice some people. That's a concern I have, is that no man's land that occurs between when you say you've completed the 25-week Learn to Dance plan. Now we're going to workshop you through till you become a graduated plus dancer. That's what I'm concerned about in that area. My second question is if this is not a program, and in fact it is a plan, why do we have to formalize it? Do we have a formalized, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we have a formalized mainstream plan, do we?
Oh, yes, I believe the mainstream committee would think so.
A teaching plan?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
That's what the list is?
A recommended teaching sequence, yeah.
Okay. My question is, if we formalize a plus teaching plan, which is what I'm now hearing that this is going to be, how many guys are going to use it? How many guys are going to take that new plan, go back home, and do what they're doing anyway?
Well,
so why are we legitimizing? What I'm seeing is happening is we are legitimizing on paper what guys have done all along anyway.
Many of them have. That's true, out of desperation and need and so forth.
At the expense of confusing the dancers.
Well, we hope to alleviate that part of it. Okay? In other words, if we say that these plus calls are the most commonly called throughout the nation, and that's what we determined on this list. And that means from when you go to a festival or anything like that, then the dancer has a larger chance of success with this list than maybe some other list that somebody else in a particular area comes up with.
But you know what I'm concerned is going to happen now is that, so we legitimize this and we take these people through the 25-week, and all of a sudden, 3-4 years from now at a national convention, there's going to be this special hall in Anaheim or Southern California or Washington, D.C., wherever the national may be, that's for those folks that have started in the fall, have completed that 25-week, and we now have a place for them to dance. And that's what I think this will evolve into, and that's what my concern, and that's what the guys in the Pacific Northwest are concerned about, is that if we legitimize this thing, that we will eventually evolve this thing into another program. And we don't need another program, as I think we all agree in this room.
Yeah.
My name is Red Hennon, and I'm from Michigan originally.
We had just one comment on this. Kenny has a comment to make.
On your comment that dancers would come up to think that now they can come dance at your mainstream club. Currently, as I'm told, these dancers who are dancing, who are learning to dance straight through the plus, they're not even told that recycle is mainstream and that what's the first call on the plus list? The linear cycle is a plus call. They're not told that. They're not even released from class, if you will. They're not told you can go out and dance currently. So that's not going to change. The dancers will still be in class. Okay. They're just the only place they're dancing other than class is the home club. The home club has invited them. Why don't you dance with us now? But they're.
Why do we have to legitimize that for the home club? Let them do what they've been doing for years.
Well, as I remind you, in Baltimore, a whole room of shouting people said they want a teaching program for areas with this problem. Everybody wants a shorter teaching program, whether mainstream is their destination or plus is their destination. Everybody wants a shorter teaching program. This is not something we just cooked up. We were asked by the majority of the people to do this work.
Okay, we want everybody's comments, okay? But let's all try to use the microphone so we get this on tape, okay? Because it's going to be taped, and it is being taped. Okay?
My name is Red Hennon. I'm from Michigan originally. I had the privilege of spending the winter in Arizona. And what I viewed there were the snowbirds. And I think this program you have is being used for snowbirds in the southern states where they are trying to get them on a plus level very quickly also, and they have a very short period of time. What I would like to really see is when those snowbirds fly north, or wherever they're going, I would like to see, because this is CALLERLAB, a cooperative effort between the southern callers, or the snowbird callers, so to speak, and the northern callers, where they could send their dancers up north to a receptive caller that could smooth them out and bring them into a more progressive level and continue their education. I don't think this is just a city folk type of program, or plan, excuse me, not program. I think it's being used down south. It certainly was being used in the Phoenix area that I observed. And I'd like to see a listing of callers that are receptive to it to give to the other callers down south so that we can expand them and not lose these dancers because they're getting clobbered. That's my only comment.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm sure that is true because the short season down for teaching down in Florida and in Texas and so forth. Yeah.
I'm from Wisconsin, the resort area of Wisconsin. I'm a call for several mainstream clubs. And I'm real happy to see these people. We like to have them walk in, the same snowbirds that the last gentleman was talking about. They bring money with them. and it doesn't take long to teach them to do a cross trail through or a Dixie style to an ocean wave. Our clubs aren't that big. A little walk through hurts anybody. I wonder, but the point I want to bring out, maybe we're expecting too much of CALLERLAB to standardize worldwide all the systems now in Wisconsin. We have 80% mainstream clubs. And we don't have the same problems. Everybody has problems. But if you people are with this 25-week system, are getting help from it where you need it, I sure don't want to see it dashed. I don't want to see that scrapped.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. We appreciate that support.
We'll also have a little comment. If you're not using mainstream as club dancing, don't you worry too much about the mainstream lists. Those of us who are calling mainstream are quite happy with it.
Super.
Here we go. Mike Sikorsky, California. 3 quick things. First of all, when this program first came out, I was very happy. I felt finally CALLERLAB has come up with something that the Southern California area in particular, as well as other areas that have this very problem, can use and make work. And on the other hand, I was very afraid that with the word 25-week program, that people were going to have the misconception that it would only take 25 weeks to learn to square dance. And that has happened in certain isolated cases. So what I did is I retyped beginner's list, and I put my class in 2 sections, Section 1 and Section 2. Section 1 was what is the 25-week plan. Section 2 is the remainder of the calls. And what in effect has happened in the class is because they get the opportunity to practice relay the Ducey and teacup chain, coordinate spin chain the gears, and a few of the others, because I started bleeding a little earlier, this class is going to graduate in 35 weeks, and I missed 3 weeks. 35 weeks. Plus, and they're out. And I've asked a couple of clubs in the area to call a soft plus, if you will, for the first couple of months, and they have agreed to do so. But these people are out dancing they'll be out dancing the 1st of May, and they've got 2 months to dance before vacation season hits. Those people are going to be sure of themselves, and if they miss 3 weeks of square dancing because of vacation in the summer, they're going to be back in September because they won't be blown out of the water because they got relay the Ducey, spin chain the gears, and teacup chain on the last night of their class. And as far as concern about them going to a dance where they don't know all of the mainstream calls, it's very simple to take one of those dancers to the side and walk them through box the net or cross trail through. Try and take somebody aside and teach them relay the Ducey between tips and make them comfortable. It doesn't work. This program is very good. Now, as far as the complaint letters you got from Southern California and the mainstream clubs that we do have in that area, there are successful mainstream programs, but they represent 10 or 15% of the population, square dance population in Southern California. We have a primarily plus area, and this program is badly needed.
Thank you, Mike.
Roger Morse, Sacramento, California. I'm one of the lucky ones that have been calling a number of years, to the point to where I used to graduate dancers in 12 weeks because there was only 22 basics. And the thing that was interesting there, we had them and they were dancers at the end of the program. And that's kind of what we're after, or plan rather. But in order to answer one of the questions about, one of the gentlemen said, if anyone can show me a better way to implement the plan. One of the things that seems to me that we're going to have to do, and I have 3 key words. We're going to have to come to a commitment to one plan or another, and then we're going to have to show responsibility to that commitment or that plan as a group, and then we can take that plan and have the adventure of teaching it. But it's a must that we have a commitment so that all can give it a try. Thank you.
Anybody? Okay. Next, please.
Dave Harry, Seattle, Washington area also. I don't have any objections with this new program that you're putting together, or plan, or whatever you want to call it. And I do feel that, first I want to make one comment. I don't feel that you need to argue whether it's a program or a plan. People are going to look at it as whatever they want. Dancers are going to look at it as a program if they want, or they're going to look at it as a plan, whatever. But my big concern of it is that when you first started discussing this plan and whatever, in, I believe it was Direction or one of the CALLERLAB publications, the term mainstream limited came out. And that is what really frightens me from our area. We teach the entire mainstream program, and we teach it thoroughly. And we would like to think that we have very competent dancers when we finish a class. Our people are no different than your people in your areas. They like to travel. Can you imagine a proficient mainstream dancer walking into one of your clubs down there that has advertised, this is our mainstream limited program or mainstream limited dance, expecting to be able to dance an easy mainstream program or easy mainstream dance, and being blown off the floor with Relay the Deucey? Yeah, we can teach box the net to your people that come our way, but what are you going to do with our people that go down your way and then come back to us and say, you didn't teach us right because we didn't know these movements on the mainstream program?
Yeah. Just one comment, and I think Kenny has a comment on this. In response to what you say, that the limited mainstream idea, and when this thing first came out, we used a lot of wordage which was not quite proper, okay? And we're aware of that. We're trying to change that. The word program came out in the very beginning, and it just kind of happened, you know.
But I think you need to spend a lot of time reprogramming callers that are going, or clubs that are going to be using this idea, so that they don't advertise mainstream limited or whatever. It's already been in the face of people, and it's going to be used, and you're going to need to do something to change that image or that idea so that is not used at advertising, because it's going to happen. You're going to end up with mainstreamers that are right out of class coming into your dance situation down there, and they're not going to be able to handle the material.
Oh, I agree. Kenny, you had a comment on that. Mike, rather.
What I see is a real, the problem of a Seattle dancer who is a mainstream dancer coming into the San Francisco Bay Area. There is no place for him to dance. What I'm saying is there is no place for them to dance. We do not have a destination level mainstream, except for a very few exceptions in our whole area. And so what we're saying is that we don't want you to change. We're not going to ask your dancers to come and dance at our dances, and I would not ask any of our dancers who have only gone through this 25-week basic to go to a mainstream dance, because they wouldn't be able to complete it. And I think we're going to cross purposes here. We're not mainstream is a program. Plus is a program. This is merely a plan to bring
dancers in certain areas where plus is the destination level to bring them into the club dancing level at an earlier time.
Yeah, I realize that, but all I'm trying to get across is that the word mainstream is not used when you're trying to promote a dance. Yeah, do whatever you want, but don't use the word mainstream at all if you're going to use something beyond the set list of mainstream movements.
So that would be very misleading, sure.
Yeah.
And
I can just see some of that type of advertising coming out. Mainstream limited because it's been sent out in our publications. Even though it's invalid, it has hit, every caller in this organization has seen that, and somebody is going to use that. So we need to strongly impress upon people not to use the term mainstream limited or mainstream anything when you're referring to this,
that
this
is our
teaching
purpose.
Sequence or whatever.
Right. Really, that's one of our purposes this year, to try to do that kind of thing. Yes.
Scott Pierce, also from the Sacramento area. Our area, I'm one of those callers you alluded to that has never used the program. Our area, if I can give you a little bit of a description, is one that by your own criteria would probably have a great need for this program. We have about 85 clubs. We're mostly urban. Probably not more than 2 or 3 mainstream clubs. Mainstream is not a healthy program in Sacramento. Our Callers Association voted almost unanimously to stay away from the 25-week program and stay with the mainstream teaching order. We had one caller who was not an active member of our association who used the 25-week program. I've had 2 experiences. One was a dance that I called that he sent some of his new dancers to. We advertised it to a certain level on the mainstream list. They came. We ended up workshopping 3 or 4 calls that he hadn't taught them yet because they weren't on the because they weren't on the 25-week plan. A few months later, their club put on a weekend festival with a new dancer program. Unfortunately, when they hired the caller, they didn't give him any direction as to what level he should call at new dancer. We went into the hall. Most of our dancers were at about 49 or 50 basics. He got to the workshop portion. He says, okay, what would you like to workshop? And they said, well, here's where we are. Show us something a little farther down the mainstream list. The dancers from the club that we're putting on the weekend said, yeah, we just finished learning teacup chain, single circle to a wave, and why don't you show us load the boat and relay the deucey? And the caller's standing there going, what do I do? My concern is that the same type of effect is going to carry over when dancers finish the program and will be carried right into mainstream and plus dances. Those are experiences that I've had. I agree with Kenny 100% that we need to shorten the teaching time. But I think the only way we can do that is to cut the dead wood out of the mainstream and the plus list and shorten them. And I don't agree that this plan is a good alternative in the meantime.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Next.
Arlen Miller, Los Angeles again. Anytime you get 5 or more callers together, let's say you get 5 callers together, you're going to get 37 opinions. But there are a couple of basic givens. For example, the vast majority of dancers in Los Angeles will not be going up to Seattle to dance. The vast majority of Seattle dancers won't be coming to Los Angeles. The vast majority of callers in LA are not going to call in Seattle, and vice versa. What we're pointing out here are nitpicky little exceptions. Okay? God bless Seattle, the mainstream program works. Okay? Realistically, they don't need the program. They don't need to be here. LA is having a situation where clubs are folding left and right. And we've got to stop the skid. Okay? If mainstream is working in Seattle, wonderful. It ain't working in LA.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
There's a switch on there.
Yeah, I just.
You're next.
Yeah, I'm Tony Oxendine. I don't have a club that I teach. Therefore, I haven't been exposed to teaching the plus list or the mainstream list or the new 25-week list. I have looked at all of the lists, and I work all of the lists. I've looked at the 25-week list. There's things about it I like. There's things about it I don't like. There's calls on it I wish were not, and there's calls not on it I wish was there. I think the problem we've got in here is that we're all beating a dead horse. I've called in Seattle. I've called in Southern California. And everybody's right. The mainstream program in the Pacific Northwest and the basic program is very strong. I just did the Oregon State Festival, and the basic hall had probably 200 squares, and the mainstream hall had probably 400 squares, and the plus hall had about 40. I've done other state associations where the main hall, I just did one last week, the main hall was plus. It was about 75 squares. It was an association dance. And the mainstream hall was about a third of that. And the plus hall was full, the mainstream hall wasn't. I think the problem that we have here, part of the big problem we've got among all of us is that we all have an I problem. Everybody that's been up on the mic said I, or my area, I did this, I did that. And I think we have a problem that we don't see the forest because of the trees. Something very bad is wrong in our activity. Our numbers are down severely. There's not nearly as many dancers now as there was. And so somebody's doing something wrong. The lists that we have work. The mainstream list would work great if everybody did it. The problem is callers get in here and they say I do one thing and they go back home and do another. So consequently, the mainstream list isn't going to work the way it's written for the majority of the dancers in the country. And I think what we need to do is worry about the good of the activity. And if we can get dancers in, it's not a good selling point. You guys sit and think about it. It's not a good selling point to come up to someone and say, I'm going to teach you how to square dance, and it's going to take me 45 weeks of 2.5 hours a night. Or if you want to make it sound better, I saw in here the other day somebody was doing 3 hours a night, twice a week. Most people don't have time for that. They got other things to do besides learn to square dance. If we make our product attractive and marketable, right now a 45-week program isn't marketable. That's part of the reason we don't have as many people as we have, and it's part of the reason we have the dropout rate that we have. If you can get more people in a shorter period of time, regardless of the level, I don't care if it's 25 weeks or 15 weeks or 10 weeks, we need some type of teaching level in order to get more warm bodies in our activity. If we get more warm bodies in the activity, we're still going to have a dropout rate, but we're going to keep more people. If we only keep 20% of our dancers, 20% of 1,000 is a lot better than 20% of 100. Once you get them in the activity, you have them hooked. If you can get them in there, then you can teach them whatever you want to. I think the level thing we're talking here, the 25-week thing, is geared for the callers primarily, because that's what callers are calling. Most callers don't want to spend the time and the effort to learn how to work the mainstream list. If you get up here and say you do, that's fine. I've called for your dancers, and most of us don't. You know, I know anywhere I go, I can call single circle to a wave, get by with it. I'm going to have a hell of a problem calling peel off. And I think what we need to do is look back critically at ourselves and find out what we're doing really. And then find a list. If it's this 25-week list, or if you want to abolish this one, throw the thing away, and find another list. I'm all for finding another list. If nobody's pleased with this list, call it anything you want to. Plan, program, list. But let's get dancers in a shorter period of time so we can get folks in. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Tom Dillner from Bowling Green, Kentucky. I kind of have it lucky that I get to call in two states because I live 65 miles from Nashville, Tennessee, so I have clubs in both areas. First of all, I'm kind of disappointed in the group, the numbers in here. I figured we'd had this room full, and I know you probably feel a little uncomfortable with that, especially all the talk about this. But I've used the 25-week program plan, whatever you want to call it, back-to-back in 2 clubs for classes, the last 2 sets of lessons. It's worked very successfully. My dancers are able to go out and dance. They're not getting clobbered by other callers. I travel about 25 states a year. It is the list that I use when I'm on the road. It's typically the list that the dancers want to hear when you're out traveling. I don't want to call it a traveling caller's list, but it is. And also, it allows the dancers to get into a square dance program a lot faster. Tony's right. You go up to somebody and say 41 weeks, or 35 weeks, or 33, whatever your thing is, that's too long. Way too long. So, and the other thing, maybe this one isn't perfect, but it's an excellent starting point. We can always adopt it, we can add to it, we can delete it, we can set it up that, hey, we come back next year and we modify it a little bit. That's what these lists are for. That's what we're here for. But at least let's get off our cans and do something. This is something to work with. We've worked on this thing 3 or 4 years not to do something with it. I hate to go home tomorrow afternoon and find out that we're going to wait 4 more years and talk about it again. Let's settle this thing. Let's get this list down there where it should be.
Thank you very much. You're next, Mike.
Hey, Mike Sikorsky, Southern California. I'm going to use the word program and screw it up. This plan is not the ideal. It is not the savior of square dancing. This is not meant to supplant anything. What we really need is we need less mainstream calls, and we need less plus calls. But I was in the plus committee, and I heard about the mainstream committee, and there are an awful lot of people in those rooms who are resistant to change. Now, if you watched our United States government, it's easy to increase spending, but it's hard to drop. It's hard to go down, and it works the same way in those committees, because no matter which call you pick to look at, there's going to be 3 callers in that room, and that's their favorite call, and they will scream bloody murder if that call gets dropped. It's very tough to get those lists reduced, even though that is desperately what we need. And in lieu of that fact that change is not likely to take place in the near future, this plan, I'm going to get used to that. This plan,
good work.
This plan is definitely a super starting point, and that's what it is. It is a starting point.
Thank you. Next, please.
Walt Cooley, Pacific Grove, California. I agree that this plan is good. I'd like to see it improved. I think it could go a long way, because I don't think the teaching sequence that's in this plan is as well oriented towards what's called most often. I think it could be even more oriented towards something based on some kind of, and don't ask me how I get there, some kind of a more or less national or regional frequency, so that people would be dancing figures even earlier that they run into at most festivals and most hoedowns. But I hear the talk about the problems in the mainstream area, and I can't buy in on that. I have the only mainstream club in a predominantly plus area. I do not have any trouble with this plan. My association voted to use this 25-week combined list, and I taught my mainstream club with that list. Those people don't dance mainstream because they don't know plus. They dance mainstream because they like to dance mainstream. And they found it very interesting. They absorbed track 2 and relay the doocy and load the boat, and they said, we appreciate you teaching us that. That helps us on the other night when we go to the plus club. But don't stop calling mainstream. We like it.
That's super.
Keep going.
Right.
And I don't see the problem with the division between mainstream and plus. People will dance what they want to dance, and it doesn't matter what you call it. If they like what you're doing, they'll come back no matter what you teach them.
Thank you. Malcolm Davis, England. I've sat at the back and I've been listening to this 25-week plan. I think we all realize that this is an international organization, or should be. All I've heard is my area, my dancers, never our. I think the plan, I'm opposed to it, because I call for 8 clubs in England. Only 2 of them are full plus clubs. The others are mainstream. We dance successfully. I listened to 1 or 2 of the comments that people have said, both from the table and from the floor. Not everybody call plus, and yet somebody said everybody does it. They don't. We're looking at this with blinkers beside our eyes, down a funnel. We've got to look at this as a worldwide activity, your activity. And I would like to say that what I feel is we've got planned confusion coming in now with this 25 25-week plan. I also heard the comment, if you dance and call plus, you shouldn't be here. I am wondering what I'm doing here after coming across the Atlantic.
Thank you. Whoops. Just one comment on that. Just one comment before you leave. You say that you have a separate, you call for both separate and mainstream, plus and mainstream clubs. And so if this is the case...
I call for 8 clubs in England, and only 2 of them are plus clubs. The others are successful. The plus clubs are successful.
They're full plus clubs?
They're full plus clubs, yes, sir.
Okay. Then you don't need this program?
No, and I've been told I shouldn't be here.
Plan. Sorry. Thank you.
No one said you shouldn't be at CALLERLAB. We want everybody to be at CALLERLAB. The point is, if you don't need this plan, don't fight us on it. There are people who do need this plan. I personally don't need this plan, but I see the need.
What are you doing here?
Because you asked me to do it.
Next, please.
All right. A couple of things that I've been seeing happen here, and one thing that really bothers me. Gary Carnes from...
Thank you, Gary.
I think I'm from Arizona this weekend. Or wish I were sometimes for some of the comments that are made because of the fact that I'm from California. And ladies and gentlemen, I really see something that I think is a misconception here. And I remember when I first started calling in San Jose, which was about 14 years ago, we were all dancing mainstream and having a great time. And I know how mainstream can be alive and well, and I wish we could go back to those days. I sincerely do. I don't see that's going to happen, but we got this thing come through the mail, all about how we're going to have this now Mainstream Plus program, and our dancers came to us and said that's what we want to do, and a lot of us resisted, including myself, for a couple of years. It came to a point where the dancers were going elsewhere to get it if we didn't. This wasn't something that we brought on. It wasn't something that intentionally anybody brought on, but it's here. Now, we either have 2 ways of dealing with it. We either live with it the way it is, the levels the way they are, and learn as best we can to teach these levels and try and find a way to keep our retention of dancers back up where it should be, because that has a very serious long-term effect. You lose one couple in a class, and that's the couple that may have gone out and brought you 3 more couples next year for your class. We're losing those guys. We can either lower the level, reduce the number of calls, which I really came up here to Reno to see this happen. I was all fired up, boy, and I'll tell you, I really had been born again. I was going to come up here and set the world on fire. I used 3 gallons of kerosene, 2 hand grenades, and I couldn't even get a spark. So it's not going to happen. At least that's the way I see it. We're not going to. I wanted to see this thing come out to a reduced number of calls. I would just love to take a whole lot of the plus calls and chuck them, and a whole lot of the mainstream calls and chuck them, and let's get down to one level. Let's call that the level and be done with it. We could unite the square dance community. I don't think we're going to do that. So we've got to do something else. We've got to learn to live with it, and I saw this 25-week program at that time. Well, now it's a plan. And I said, oh, God, that's stupid. That's dumb. I'm not going to do that. Well, one time recently, our Callers Association, when I wasn't there, voted to use a plan that's not entirely unlike what we are using here. And every member of our association in our area is using that plan, and our dances for our newer dancers are predicated upon this plan, so I'm stuck. I got to use it. I hate to admit, but it's working. And the dancers are coming out to our clubs and dancing, and our club dancers don't even know that there's a difference in level. Our plus dancers are coming to our newer dances and having a ball. So that's my comment. I think this is not the best solution, but it may be the only solution, and it will work. at least until maybe we can come up with a more drastic solution.
Thank you, Gary. Kenny, you got a comment?
I was holding the stick of dynamite while Gary lit the match yesterday. Right, it blew up in my face. I must comment that the same people, and I'm not trying to criticize people, but I just don't understand where you're coming from. The same people that don't want any part of this program, of this plan, here I'm the one that said that, are the same people that stood up and voted down our attempt to delete calls from the programs. I mean, they don't want to take calls off the programs. They don't want this either. I don't understand. They obviously don't want to. I don't want to put anybody down, but we're trying to make some progress here, and we're being stifled by people that don't want to do either thing.
Okay, we're getting close to. What's our deadline here on this thing, anyway? We're almost at it. Well, Earl Johnson.
Okay. My name is Earl Johnston from Connecticut. About 12 years ago in New England, we had loads of dancers, and we came to CALLERLAB, and we told everybody how to do things. And now we're probably the biggest disaster area in the United States. We can't get beginners. You can't buy them. And I want to address Tony Oxendine's comment. Tony travels the country probably as much as any caller, and he sees these drastic losses of people. And I just want to be able to say to my grandkids that I told you so. If you don't get this list down to 10 weeks, 15 max, this activity is going to die. It will go underground like it did in the 20s, and it will be reborn. And if you don't want to face it, that's okay, because I'm just about ready to retire. But you guys, you're not only beating a dead horse, you've got a dead activity on your hands, and if you don't face up to it, you might as well start sewing your Hiltons. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl. Okay, guys, we're running short on time, so...
I never really believed I'd be following the footsteps of such a great man. I think there is one... This is sort of extrapolated, please. I think there is one method of getting this program down to manageable levels. All mainstream and plus dancers really feel advanced dancers are snobs. Totally snobs. So why don't we drop the word plus and call it transitional advanced? And this will really put the quash on a lot of people trying to step up and say, well, they're snobs, who wants to go there? And we'll have our level down to where we need it.
Thank you. Okay, we'll just take these two guys that are there comments. We have another session at 1:30, so if you have comments, come back at 1:30 and we can take them then.
My name is Eddie Phelps. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas, a not exactly rural area. We have about 140 clubs in the area. Primarily, I guess the predominant program is plus, but in reality it is a soft plus. And I think that's probably the case nationwide. We talk about moving people into square dancing quicker through the 25-week Learn to Dance plan. I think in reality it slows them down. We have a partial plan or a partial program learned. Then we have to take extra time to finish the mainstream, plus extra time to finish the plus program. I think that if we want to stop the skid, what we should do is teach the mainstream program following the CALLERLAB format that we now have, and let people dance mainstream for a period of time. That will not only stop the skid and the decline in dancers, it'll also strengthen what we claim we believe to be the basis of our program, and that is mainstream. As I say, I think the reality in life is that plus is actually soft plus nationwide. The reality of life is that what you're talking about, whether you want to call it a plan or whatever, it will be a program. It will be a soft plus program. One comment was made, they were disappointed in the number of people in the room. I would like to say I'm also disappointed in the fact that there was not a panel member opposed to this program on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One more now.
Glenn Reha from Kent, Washington. Just two real quick things. One, that Mike made a comment early on that talked about mainstream dancers going to the San Francisco area and not having a place to dance. That really concerns me, and I think that's the cancer that's going to kill us, because we've lost sight in some areas that we have two destination programs. We have mainstream and we have plus. In some areas of the country, mainstream's not a destination program, and that's sad, because in other areas, like the Seattle area, it is a destination program, and we want our dancers to dance mainstream and dance a year. I want my people, when I teach them, to dance for a year before they go to Kevin Tillmeyer to learn plus, because I want them to be good dancers when they learn plus. I don't want to dash them through mainstream and plus. Second comment I've got is, Kenny, you talked about shortening lists and teaching lists. I don't see the 25-week plan shortening anything. All we changed is the name from lessons to workshop. So we've not shortened anything. I can't, and that's why I tried to pin red down on the how long after you finish do you go on with workshop. I contend, looking at those two lists, that you're probably still going to end at 41 weeks before you graduate plus dancers. And you haven't shortened or fixed anything. We need to fix the problem of getting back to mainstream as a destination program in those areas where that's not happening. That's our problem.
Okay, we just run out of time, gang, and so we're going to have to pause for refreshments, lunch. Okay? And at 1:30, we hope you'll all come back, because we'll carry on at 1:30.
I did this with the comments. I wrote their names down or where they're from.
If anyone wants a copy of this plan, it's up here. I mean, it's not the list of calls. It's just the press release, if you will. It's not official yet.
Yeah, these were some of the negative comments, so you can kind of look them over. I wish we could address that situation. I wish we had mainstream programs in our area. Maybe what we need to do is, why can't call it? Maybe CALLERLAB needs to help us get mainstream. How do you do it? I don't know. How do you do it?
Did you move the copies of the plan, or just?
She has I had all the copies of the plan. We're passing them out. She's passing them out.
Oh, yeah. As you go out the door,
I'm sorry.
There's a woman back there passing them out.
Somebody's passing them out. Okay.
Mike, what's happening in Northern? Well, I'm from Northern California. We have except for Walt here, we virtually have no. Well, hey, I'm going to be honest with you. I wish we had. We're talking about economic reality. As a caller, if I have a mainstream class and I draw things for 9 couples, economically, all confident.
Thank you. That's all right. Thank you for coming this morning.
I wish we were 50-50. You tell me how much it means to our area, and I will go back down. I will
I was just an area rep, and that was very interesting, because same thing, we
Thanks a lot. Well, but see, like Kenny was talking about, I can see where that can be a problem. I can see that it can be a problem in LA. I mean, we've heard about that for more than just 1 year. And unfortunately, you've waited 4 years to you waited 4 years to make the decision you want to make, and you're not going to get it.
You're really bordering on tradition.
No, wait a minute. I sat there and stood up for half that shit, split the ring, Alaman right.
God said, these figures are out.
Divine. Yeah, sure. I know. I just killed it. But I'm 32. Seriously, in our area, we can't make a 20 call change. We just can't do it. It would be. Yeah, I understand. They're minor to you. They might be minor to you, but they're not. I may not like them. Yes. You're right. If we don't, like Earl says, if we don't teach,
I agree. I think that maybe he's going to have to have it.
Yeah, absolutely. But you got to do it proper. You just can't go in and say, here's the knife.
Well, we had that opportunity. What career does it?
You believe that? Are you in favor of that?
Yes, we should have, but people are...
No, I mean, we've been through this already.
I don't care
We
what you say.
decided that
Did
it
you
was
see
best
Frank
to
Graham
separate
stand up
them
for anything?
because so many places you can't do one. It's just going to be... You read Bob Van's letter. Did you get a copy?
Well, depending on how
nice letter.